I mean, it's plethora of issues that are being explored here in Botswana, and I think there's a realization of the time that is running out. Issues around sustainable development goals. For example, you do have the UNDP that is really giving unwavering support to the member states in terms of making they're able to realize all these important goals, and really understanding that time is of the essence, but also time is running out. But also quite a number of issues as well being looked at. You look at the ramifications coming from a number of conflicts, whether you're looking at Russia-Ukraine war and of course the results in the African continent, issues around food security. But also, for example, today, Alicia, there was a very great deal of understanding in terms of making sure that the private sector as well in the African continent, they're able to understand the enormity of the task at hand, but also forging those collaboration between the governments and the private sector, so that we can see Africa rising above these challenges, but also a very complex international environment in light of those elections. You look at the US, for example, delegates really looking at implications for the African continent with the Trump administration. What will it mean for the African continent? But also there's a very understanding that it's time for solution to be put into action as opposed to just having a talk shop.
And let's further elaborate on that, Khaya. I know we literally ran out of time yesterday as we were about to deliberate on the issues pertaining to that very point that you've just made, peace and stability and security within the continent. So which direction are these engagements taking in terms of how they then going to arrive or derive at solutions that are going to cater for the wider continent in terms of how they deal with conflict resolution across the continent?
That's a very burning issue here in the African continent, Alicia, especially because you look at a number of hotspots, whether you're looking at the Eastern DRC, which is a very long-standing problem, but you do have the SADC mission that consists of South African troops with their Malawian counterparts, as well as Tanzania. But also you look at the recent developments in Mozambique, the post-election violence really that has been very dominant in that part of the world. So I think there's a very clear understanding that for you to achieve development, for you to really just bring change in Africa, you do need peace. You really need to silence the guns in the African continent. So that has been one of the talking points here from the delegates, talking about the importance of making sure that there is peace prevailing across the continent. For example, if you want to implement the African Continental Free Trade Area so that you can have seamless trade within the African continent and remove all the barriers and make sure that the African states really are able to function for their people, but also so that people can really see the benefits from their countries. So that's another very burning issue here, and especially yesterday as well, where we saw the president of Botswana, Mr. Bogo, really talking to the delegates in terms of making sure that this particular gathering does not degenerate into flattery and in terms of the exchange of ideas, but really making sure that there is durable solutions that are presented to member states.
And in terms of education, Khaya, we know that Africa is largely a very young continent. What discussions are taking shape pertaining to how they're going to ensure the quality and diversifying of education, particularly across all countries within the continent?
I think, Alicia, there's a realization that education is a very powerful tool that the member states of the African Union must use to bring change in terms of issues around digital economy, in terms of bringing innovation into their countries. I think there's a very great deal of understanding that it's quite important as well to provide quality education in terms of science and technology, and also for Africa not to be excluded, especially because artificial artificial intelligence, one of the talking points here, it's really banks on education, and in education that will enable the African economies really to thrive, to perform optimally for their population, and be able to address all these myriad of challenges. So by all means, I think there is an understanding that education should be addressed because quite a number of countries are battling with this particular issue, but also in terms of rolling out curriculum that can modernize education so that they are able to tackle all these challenges.
And then you spoke about another important aspect, Khaya, there of the public-private partnerships. So which sectors are the delegates recommending that these are the particular sectors that actually should go into this type of collaboration? Because we've seen, even here in South Africa, when it comes to public-private partnerships, it's still largely contested because we still don't underline the actual framework and how it is going to be actually effected.
I think when you look at the public-private sector partnership, a very key subject matter here that has been brought in terms of really making sure that there is development in the African continent. I think there is an understanding that the private sector must really know its role in terms of really just rolling out the innovation, the ideas, but also dealing with a very big crisis facing a number of countries in the African continent of unemployment, especially among the young people. So in fact, it's one of the priorities for the new administration here in Botswana in terms of making sure that they tackle that issue. But also there's a great deal of a number of experts, the development practitioners to the experts, but something that is also phenomenal to watch, Alicia, is also the young researchers as well, presenting ideas so that the young people as well are part and parcel of the solutions, but also most importantly, making sure that everybody is really rolling up their sleeves in understanding the gravity of the situation, that it's really unsustainable to having quite a number of young people unemployed without any skills whatsoever. So there's a very clear understanding in terms of really just getting down to the brass tacks and tackling all these challenges.
Absolutely, and I suppose Botswana is a perfect example of that, with the new administration hiring basically very young people to be at the helm of all these portfolios. Khaya, thank you so much for that comprehensive update. SABC News reporter Khayelihle Khumalo in Gaborone, Botswana.